Okay, so we talked about the industrial age. I'm going to show you another method from the industrial age, and this is the age of chemistry. Now, all the methods that we've gone through so far have all needed oxygen. So with the bow drill, you saw me blowing onto the ember. When we were doing the wire wool, you might have seen me holding it in the air and the wind blowing in was giving it oxygen. So there's something called the fire triangle, which are the three things that you need to have a fire. So there's heat, there's fuel, and there's oxygen. So the heat with the bow drill we got from the friction and the pressure, the oxygen I was giving by blowing it, and the fuel was those little black embers that I was rubbing off the wood. Now normally you would need to blow onto a fire to get it to go bigger, use a blast furnace to throw a lot of oxygen into it, but I'm going to show you another way where we don't need to worry about oxygen. It's a really useful way if you can't get into the fire, you're trying to sort of start it in a different way. So we've got two chemicals here. So one of them is called glycerol. So this is kind of a food additive. You use it in cake making to make your icing nice and shiny. It's basically a sugary syrup. You can have it in first aid kits. It's a little bit unpleasant, but if you have too much of this, it will make you go to the toilet very quickly. So people have them in first aid kits. It's also quite good if you have a head injury. It can reduce the swelling behind the eyes, and it helps with that as well. So you might be able to find it in a first aid kit. The other chemical I've got is something called potassium permanganate, which again you can use in a medical kit. So if you mix this with water, it goes a really bright purple, and then you can spread it onto somewhere where you've got a cut, and it'll help keep the infection away, so it cleans the cut. The other thing you can do, people have used it in emergency situations, because it goes really, really bright purple when you mix it with water. People use it for signalling. So if you're lost somewhere, you can put some into a stream, and hopefully someone further down the stream wonders why on earth that stream is now purple and calls somebody about it. If you're out and in a very snowy environment, you can spread it onto the snow and it'll show up a bright purple. So if anybody's flying a rescue plane or a drone, a bright purple patch on white snow will show up really, really well. So if you're out somewhere and you're lost, you can spread it onto snow to give somebody a signal of where you are. But what we're going to do is we're going to combine the two of these things together. So the potassium permanganate, if you're interested in your chemistry, it's KMnO4. So the K is the potassium, the Mn is the manganese, and the O4 is the oxygen. That's the important bit that we're interested in, the fact that this chemical has already got oxygen bound up inside it. Now the glycerol is what we call a hydrocarbon. So it's got hydrogen, it's got carbon, and it's also got a lot of oxygen in it as well. So if we combine these two together, it's already got the oxygen inside, so that we don't need to burn it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little pile, like a little hill of the potassium permanganate, and I'm going to make a little hole, a little well in the middle. So I want these two chemicals to mix together. So when I put a couple of drops in here, in the middle of my well, so it holds the liquid in the same place exactly where I want it, and it might take a moment or two to start a reaction. I'm going to use my little stick just to mix the two. There we go. You can already see some smoke happening. So the smoke, then we get our flame, and it will still be a hot ember there. So you can see that red hot glow even around those flames. Now you might have noticed on the flame it was a little bit of a different colour, so it had some white flame in there as well as the sort of normal yellow. So that was the manganese burning. So the yellow was just the carbon from our glycerol burning away, but the white flame was from our manganese. Now if you've ever seen any fireworks, that different coloured flames that you get from fireworks is all down to different kinds of metals. So the different kinds of metals that you put in a firework will give you green or reds or purples, whites. All those different colours come from the metal that's burning. So with this one, we had that nice white flame coming from our manganese, and you've got a lump of it here that's left over. There's still heat coming off of it, but the really interesting thing, I think, from a chemistry point of view, is I didn't need to do anything at all there. I mixed the two chemicals together. I didn't need to blow on it. I didn't need to rub it, I didn't need to strike anything. So if I get a reasonable amount of this and make a pile, I can pour some of that on, and straight away I can put my wood shavings, I can put my paper, I can put my small twigs on it, put it on top, and I don't need to blow on it, I don't need to make sure it's got any oxygen going through it. I can just leave it and it'll ignite in its own accord and it'll burn away. You can see the end of this stick is already sort of scorched from just where I was holding it, so it shows you how much heat comes off of it as well. So that is a really, really easy way to start a fire if you're in an emergency. So if you've fallen in a river, your hands are now really cold and numb, you can't easily manipulate a bow drill, you can't strike your flint and steel together, maybe your ferrocerium's fallen out of your pocket, but you've still got your first aid kit, so you get out those chemicals, with your numb fingers you pull together some fuel and you pour those over it, you'll still be able to get a fire going even in the worst situations. So a really useful way of getting a fire going in an emergency: potassium permanganate and glycerol to get things going.
Brilliant, thanks Jack.
Cool.